one of the things of launching leaders is the ability to communicate. And in life, the ability to communicate is extraordinarily important. And ironically, it's a skill. You think, well, you know, some people are born great communicators. No, they're not. Everyone's born naked, you know, I've seen it. Yes, communication is a skill. But, you know, communication is a skill. And it's a skill that can be acquired and learned. And we had one girl come into the course, and she was very, very shy. But she wanted to enhance her career. And so she got herself a mentor, and she decided to do Toastmastresses. So Toastmasters, that's a group that you go along to, and it's all about public speaking. And first of all, they let you give a prepared talk. But eventually, when you walk in, they'll just randomly pick a topic and give you a topic, and you have 1 minute to prepare and get up and give maybe a 2-minute talk. You know, now that is acquiring a skill. At the end of that course, you know, she did that. She did a few other things. She applied for an advancement. She got an advanced job. Now she's a tutor at a polytech. She started out so shy. Now she's a tutor at a polytech because communication is a skill that you can learn. Now, part of communication, and one of the best ways to communicate, is to tell stories. You know, if you think about the great talks you've heard, they're full of stories, right? Because the objective of a story is to get a message across that people can relate to. So, you know, you find that in the Bible there's stories about sheep and goats and things like that because, hey, everybody had them, you know. It doesn't mean so much to us city dwellers anymore, you know, sheep and goats, what's the difference? Most people can't tell the difference these days. So we have to tell stories that people can relate to. So when you're communicating, always think of stories. You know, I had an experience, I read a story once years ago, and it was about a guy on a train, and he was in the 1920s riding on this train, and there was this incredible snowstorm, and he went up to the front of the train and was talking to the driver, and he says, man, you know, this snowstorm, you know, it must be pretty dangerous driving in a snowstorm like this. And he says, no, he says, see the light out front there? He says, it lights up about 100 metres of track. He said, as long as I can see 100 metres, I can make a journey of 1,000 miles. And I thought that was a great story, and I had a similar experience myself once where I was riding a motorbike over to Tauranga, and you go through the Karangahake Gorge, which is between Paeroa and Waihi. Very steep sides, river runs along the side, and it was at night time. I'd finished a midnight shift at a plastics factory, and I was heading over about 1 o'clock in the morning going through the gorge. And on my motorbike, I'd sort of decked it up a bit for touring. I did a lot of Ks on bikes, and so I'd put these twin spotlights on this bike, and it gave some serious headlight power. You know, my headlight power was probably 1 kilometre. And besides that, I'd put air horns on this bike. So when I hit the horn, man, it was like a truck, you know, warm, like this. So I'm going through the gorge, and back in the day, this is before they built the Kaimai Tunnel, so there was no tunnel under the mountain. The train used to come through the gorge. So the train's on the other side of the river. I'm on this side, there's cliffs, hundreds of feet up like that. On this side, drops off about 20 or 30 feet into the river. So I'm winding my way around there, the train's coming the other direction, he's got this really powerful headlight. I think to myself, yeah, my headlight's as good as yours, you know? And then he hits his horn. Ooh, well, this, I can do that too. Warm. Pop the fuse on the bike, I'm in absolute darkness, about 50 miles an hour. Drop-offs on this side, cliffs on that side, you know? Tell you, you know, managed to pull up in the gravel on the side of the road, got off the bike, waited for a minute for my heart to sort of restart, and scrambled around on the side of the road, and I found a use for cigarettes. There was a cigarette package that has tin foil on it. I grabbed that bit of tin foil, wrapped it around the fuse, and got my bike going again. But I didn't try using the horn and the lights again. But you know, here's the point. I could make that journey at night. was about 100 kilometres. As long as I could see 100, 200 yards ahead, I can make that journey. But if you lose the light, you're in trouble. And you know, our lives are like that. We can make an incredible journey through our life if we have the light with us. You know? But you lose the light, you're in trouble. Our lives, if we know, if we have a plan, the really critical stuff is, what are we going to do tomorrow? What are we going to do next week? And those little tomorrows and those next weeks, they add up to the journey of our life. So you waste your tomorrows, you waste your next weeks, you're going to waste your life. So that's kind of like, you know, those little things, they're cumulative. There's another incident that I can think of that illustrates the value of things in our lives. You might recall that in the first evening we spent together, I put up a little flow diagram that sort of goes like this. You have input. Remember what it leads to? Not yet. Your thoughts and attitudes. So, you know, you want to change your thoughts and your attitudes, change the input. And that then goes to, as a man thinketh, that comes to your actions, what you do. And the result of all the actions of your life is the outcomes, right? So I'll come back to that. One of my sons started a business. He builds sort of small homes, you know, minor dwellings, they call them, up to about 60 square metres. And he's got this business, he built a factory and it's going really well. He's got about a dozen guys working for him. And about 3 years ago, he hired 2 guys pretty much at the same time. Very, very similar. Both in their early 20s. Both of them had got their girlfriends pregnant, struggling to make ends meet, no budget, in debt, credit card debt, broken cars. One of them had lost his licence. They both smoked cigarettes and their lives were a mess. They desperately needed the job. So they both worked. Now, both of them were quite capable of doing the job. And Matson decided to mentor these young fellas. So he started spending a bit of time talking to them about the sort of things they could do to improve their lives. He talked to them about setting up a budget. He talked to them about giving up smoking. And he tried to encourage them to read books. And the first book that he gave them was a favourite of mine. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I think I've showed it to the class, you know, really, really good book. So he actually bought a copy for each of the boys and gave it to them. And it was interesting for me to sort of watch what happened over the next couple of years. Here's the difference. One boy, Andrew, he read the book. He started to ask questions about it. He talked to me about stuff. He talked to Matson about stuff. He set up a budget. He got himself out of debt. He got his car licence back. He got a decent car instead of smashed up old things that he was forever wrecking, you know. He started a little side hustle to make money on the side. He was actually pretty good with cars, so he'd buy cars off Facebook, I think, and $400 or $500, tidy them up, sell them, make $300 or $400. He gave up smoking. And he talked to me about what he could do to improve his career opportunities. And as I talked to him, he's quite an outgoing kid, quite a likeable kid. And I said, well, you know, one of the things that this company needs is a salesperson. I said, Matson's doing it at the moment, but if they increase their business, there's a lot of work in sales. You've got to follow up, you've got to talk to people, you've got to give them the right information, there's a lot of homework, you've got to talk to engineers and architects and all sorts. So there's a lot of work in sales. Why don't you train yourself up in sales? Matson talked to him and encouraged him to do the same. So he went online and paid $1,000 US of his own money to learn sales. At the end of all of that learning and training, he showed his value to the business, and they made him a partner in the business. Last month, he sold 7 houses, $1.2 or $3 million worth of sales in 1 month. It's only 2 years ago, that was a year's business. Now it's a month's business. Andrew is now a partner. Now the other boy, who I won't give you his name, but I'll call him Blake, just for fun. Any Blakes out there? You know, Blake was one of those guys that you'd tell him, you know, why don't you read this book? Yeah, whatever, you know, sure, right. Yeah, okay, but he never did. And Blake would actually come along and tell Matson how to run the business. You know, you should do it like this. Interesting kid. Didn't read, didn't go online, didn't budget, didn't give up smoking, didn't get any new skills, used to mostly turn up to work late, got very jealous of Andrew, caused serious disharmony amongst the other staff, tried to poison it against Andrew. In the end, Blake got the sack. So 2 kids who started basically at the same time with the same level of ability in the same hopeless sort of situations in life, 2 completely, absolutely different outcomes. So let's take a look at this. What was the difference? Why did Andrew take stuff on board and Blake not? What's going on here?
First he had a good attitude, right? He took on what the boss said.
So attitude. Now if you're going to learn, what attitude do you need to have?
You need to be teachable, humble.
Teachable and humility, exactly. Humility and teachability. Andrew had it. Andrew decided what he wanted, recognised he needed to have this stuff, and swallowed his pride. On the other hand, Blake, arrogant. I don't know that stuff. Can't tell me anything. Literally. But look at the difference. Because of the level of humility and teachability, Andrew changed input in his life. He started to read books, he started to go online and do online courses. He set himself a goal of what he wanted to become. He wanted to get into sales. He wanted to improve his communication skills. He invested in himself. Now, here's the thing. Who controls the input in your life?
Yourself.
You do. We all have agency. That means we have the right to choose. We can choose what we do, what input we have in our lives, what time we spend on our input. Now, reading a book, that was great, a book a month. If you read 10 pages a day, you can read a 300-page book every month. 10 pages a day. How many pages a minute could you read? Page a minute? Page every 2 or 3 minutes? Depends on the pages, but probably a couple of minutes a page for the average reader. maybe more. But that's 20 minutes. And you can read 10 pages, you know. If you're a bit better reader, 20 minutes you'll read 20 pages. A book a month. 20 minutes a day. Change the input of your life to make a huge difference. So your input changes your thoughts and attitudes. Your thoughts and attitudes will determine what your actions are going to be, and as a result of the actions you take, you will get the outcome. It's a very simple sort of a plan. Now, you can see from the story of Andrew and Blake how different, what a difference it makes to be teachable, humble, and to decide what it is you want to achieve. So, as you sort of go through this course, and as you rise above, one of the opportunities you're going to have is to be an example, be a mentor, to help others. And you need to be a good communicator to do that. So you can do it by telling stories about your own experience. The best stories are always ones that you did, that happened to you, that you watched. You can tell stories about third parties, you can read stories out of books, but the stories that people relate to are the ones that happen to you. Because people say to themselves, yeah, I know how that feels. If he can do that, I can do that. People relate to stories out of your life.